What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here, another pod. What's going on in pop culture right now? Another jumbo-packed week this week. A lot of good stuff to get into here. That guy Drake, Scary Hours 3, he just cannot stay away no matter what he tells us he's going to do. New EP from ENHYPEN. On the TV side, two, I think, very intriguing series. A Murder at the End of the World on FX and Monarch, Legacy of Monsters on Apple. And then a bunch of movies. Rustin on Netflix, Taika Waititi's Next Goal Wins, A24's Dream Scenario starring Nicolas Cage, and of course the Hunger Games prequel, The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. So I think a big variety. Once again, a lot of good stuff to get into here. Make sure you subscribe, youtube.com/nostalgiapod, linktree.com/nostalgiapod. Get the pod any way you can. Leave a rating, leave a review, do the thing. See the links below for the best of 2023 Spotify playlists, my favorite songs of the year, updated weekly. Leave a comment, send a tweet, let me know what's up, and let's get into it. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of ENHYPEN's 5th EP, Orange Blood. Yes, ENHYPEN is back. First release since Dark Blood came out just a few months ago, earlier this year. Orange Blood, very much described as a companion piece to Dark Blood. And ENHYPEN, they've been having a pretty big year for themselves, recently celebrating their 3-year anniversary this fall. But in that, 3 years, they've since toured the US, played the Tokyo Dome, become one of the myriad really successful new male K-pop groups, many of which are under hype, like ENHYPEN. And I was a big fan of Dark Blood, which I thought was a really good entry point into this group. The lead single, Bite Me, really grabbed me. But in general, I thought the production was quite engaging. The little darkness, little rock at times, pretty cool. And Orange Blood definitely wasn't quite what I was expecting following up Dark Blood. This is a lot lighter production overall. And to me, it stands out less as well. There's some good moments on here, but overall, I think this is just kind of less interesting music. And it doesn't really sound as much like a companion piece. I think lyrically, it's probably connected more, but like the production is such a big switch up to me that it's just not really what I was looking for from the group coming off the Dark Blood success. Just kind of going through the track list here. Track 1, Mortal, has this like spoken intro throughout, both in English and Korean. Pretty noticeable synth line, some singing. It's kind of like the intro track Fate on Dark Blood, very similar vibe, very similar setup, I guess, to the EP. Then track 2 is the lead single of Orange Blood, Sweet Venom. Definitely a fun single, nice funky bass line, cool snares, definitely a groovy song. Does it grab you the same way Dark Blood or Bite Me did? With its, I think, really sticky earworms and really fun melody? No, I don't think so. I don't think it's quite on that level, but it's the closest thing Orange Blood has to a song like that. Track 3, Still Monster. This has like a kind of like nice like light guitar line, but to me the song's just a bit plain, just a bit simple. Next track, Blind. I like the hi-hats, drum production. That sounds pretty cool. The like vocal breakdown, like the wait a minute part, I think is probably the catchiest part about the song. I like this one. Orange Flower stood out to me just because the kind of 80s production, inspiration, very fitting of pop music these days, that stood out. And that's kind of it. It's really the spoken word intro track aside, there's only 4 songs really on the EP, because then to end it off, we have Sweet Venom in English, which is the first English song ENHYPEN's made. And then Sweet Venom again, featuring Bella Porch with a verse. And I think Bella Porch, to her credit, actually kind of flows on the beat and fits the song pretty well. But yeah, it's kind of brief. And I just don't think there was as many moments that grab you the way there were on Dark Blood. So as much as like Sweet Venom is nice, like I think I'd just rather listen to Bite Me again. So yeah, better days are ahead for ENHYPEN. They've already been really successful and really quite popular in the past few years, despite the early days of their career. So no worries about that. I'd be Looking forward to getting a full-length album from them, hopefully next year, we'll see. But let me know, how are you feeling about ENHYPEN's Orange Blood? Did you feel like this was a bit of a downshift, a bit of a minor work following the success of Dark Blood earlier this year? Let me know. And for more K-pop reviews, more music reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Scary Hours 3 from Drake, aka For All the Dogs, Scary Hours edition. Yes, Drake is back with new music once again, less than 2 months after his most recent album, For All the Dogs, which we reviewed here on the show. Check that out if you missed it. And this is coming in really stark contrast to the comments Drake had made, where he said that he was going to take some time off from just being very busy and very active as a musician, partially due to some stomach issues he cited, but also I think just to kind of decompress and reset. And since he said that, again, less than 2 months ago, we have this announcement of another Drake tour in tandem with J. Cole, the As Big as the What tour. Dates are out now, on sale now. And we got new music tacked on to For All the Dogs, positioned as the third Scary Hours release. Of course, Scary Hours, series of EPs from Drake, usually coming at interesting times, short, brief, moments, but have made quite the impact. Of course, the first Scary Hours features God's Plan, one of the biggest songs of Drake's career. And Scary Hours 2, which did come out not that long ago, did feature, some minor hit in Wants and Needs with Lil Baby, and also I think a really strong song, Lemon Pepper Freestyle, featuring Rick Ross. So the Scary Hours name in general, I think, has a lot to live up to for Drake fans and whatnot. And when I saw that this was coming out, well, again, we got very little notice, basically a surprise drop, I kind of rolled my eyes because it just comes across as Drake's inability to take a break, inability to be out of the limelight for a split second, and kind of coming across as an attention whore in a certain sense. And I think the music is strong enough and different enough from the rest of For All the Dogs that Scary Hours 3 is a worthy work. And if Drake now, in fact, does follow through with taking some time off from new releases, of course, he's going on tour, but maybe it'll actually kind of make an impact. So a lot more is to come in terms of the Drake project, he goes so little time without giving us music, and now the clock is being reset once again. So we'll see. But the songs that are here on this, and there's only a handful, it's, of course, tacked on for streaming purposes at the end of For All the Dogs, so you'd have to scroll it down. It is only 6 tracks, new tracks. And, going into these, they stand out because it's Drake basically foregoing hooks, foregoing singing for the most part, and just kind of doing bars Drake, rapping ass rapper Drake, reminding everyone about the pen. Because that was a criticism of For All the Dogs, broadly speaking, where lyrically Drake came across as inconsistent, let's say. And yeah, kind of going into it here, I think the first new track, Red Button, this one stands out really just for the, I think, references on it, and just because high profile name drops basically. Look no further than Taylor Swift, the only one that I ever rated, only one who could make me drop the album a little later. Pretty good compliment for Taylor from a titan like Drake, like that line. And then a new entry in Drake and Kanye's relationship. Every time that Yeezy called a truce, he had my head inflated, thinking we're going to finally piece it up and get to levitating. I like that. Some fun wordplay on this. Park the Phantom on the curb, call me Larry David, however he says it. I like that one too. I think the thing about these songs is it's really just kind of bars Drake just kind of speaking some thoughts, more or less. So I don't know how revisitable a lot of these songs are, but most of the lyrics, most of the rapping, the wordplay, the rhyming, it's pretty strong. Not that I needed a reminder that Drake still got it. I certainly have always thought that, but it's kind of a release for the critics, I guess you could say. Track 2 really stood out to me. I think this is the best song on Scary Hours 3, Stories About My Brother. And he kind of intros it and kind of speaks about the context of Scary Hours 3, which I really appreciated. He said it's like the storm before the calm. We'll get to the vacation later. Decompress before the intermission. Okay, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt on that. I hope you follow through with it. Some fun wordplay, depositions, exposition, smoking, calling someone a chain smoker, EDM reference. Conductor Williams beat once again. Shout out Griselda. And this one's pretty good. The shoe fits. This one stands out because this is almost like Drake's specific response to the misogynist charges laid against him lyrically over his past few releases, and Drake kind of giving his perspective on that and how he's speaking to and his feelings about women in his life and potential relationships and things like that. It's honestly a lot more tactful of a response than I would have expected, and it overall it's done pretty well. And then of course also on this song you have just an amazing dart thrown at James Harden. Scary Hours 3 apparently was just recorded in the last week or so, like over a 5-day period, and you can tell because the line about James Harden is incredibly timely given like his recent playing schedule. But the line is just so funny. Quiet everybody, the game's starting, my new boo hooping tonight, and he say he played at the Garden. She point to the guy that she talking about, and it's James Harden. My God, how far James Harden has fallen. But that is a hilarious line, I can't lie. You got the next song, Wickman, Alchemist beat, some fun wordplay, some fun rhyming, probably like the densest version of that, but I don't think it's like that great of a song to revisit. Although, I think some really strong bit of like introspectiveness from Drake here, talking about the passing of his friend, the model Nadia Tooley. Nadia died in Dubai. I waited on a spirit to come by for like 17 months. That shit didn't visit me once. God damn, man. Like, that's heavy for sure. Evil Ways features J. Cole. They going back and forth, kind of trading bars. As much as I want to like a song like this, especially coming off the great reception, the first-person shooter between Drake and Cole off For All the Dogs, Evil Ways, though, I just think like it's a lot of throwaway bars. It's a lot of kind of like dumb double entendres and dumb stupid metaphors and stuff, particularly on the Cole front. Like it's like kind of fake deep shit. And like not that fun of flexing. So like I think this is a song that's kind of come and go, to be honest, but kind of cool at least that it exists. Like there was a Rosalia like Nosebleeds there's a Nosebleeds reference about their fame. It's a Rosalia drop. Like some of the wordplay, I was like, this is kind of tough. And then the last song, You Broke My Heart, Drake for the end of this EP, singing again, makes you remember honestly just how much you miss it when you listen to a bunch of only bars no hook Drake songs, which he can do and can do well. But Drake basically at the end reminding you why he's Drake, why he's as big as he is, because he is so well-rounded. And yeah, am I going to revisit Scary Hours 3 all that much? No, I'm not planning on it. I think the Scary Hours name, I don't want to say it's played out, but again, God's plan is on the first one. You're really not going to ever surpass the release at this point. So I just hope he actually follows that context that he gave us on this and really takes his own advice and goes a year without releasing music. I don't know if he has it in him. We'll see. But the clock has once again been reset between us and new Drake music. So we'll see what happens. But honestly, it exceeded my expectations. This really Scary Hours 3 For All the Dogs Scary Hours edition. But yeah, let me know, how'd you feel about the release? What did you think of it coming out, 6 weeks after For All the Dogs? Are you happy with it? Do you also want Drake to take at least a little break before he comes back? Because we know he'll come back. Let me know. And for more rap reviews, more music reviews, subscribe. And I'll see you next time. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of A Murder at the End of the World, the new FX on Hulu miniseries from Britt Marling and Zal Batmanjali. This is, of course, Zal and Britt's follow-up series, first series since The OA on Netflix, which was a big hit, a show that captivated people for its unusualness and kind of, I don't want to say groundbreaking, but ability to break the mold of what you expect from drama series and sci-fi series and things like that, things of that nature. And this is their first series since, and I say this is more of a conventional, at least on the surface, TV miniseries, very much in the mold of an Agatha Christie style murder mystery, a lot of stuff we've gotten recently, such as Knives Out and Glass Onion, for example. And this one is not starring Britt Marling like the OA did, but Britt Marling is in fact still in a supporting role. Murder at the End of the World is starring Emma Corrin, also featuring Clive Owen, Harris Dickinson, Alice Braga. Really strong cast. Pretty great. And yeah, I think through the first 2 episodes, which are out now, I thought this was pretty compelling. Not going to lie. I thought this was definitely interesting. I'm definitely hooked. I'm planning to watch the series. And I think just the core structure of it, which is this kind of like amateur, viral, young sleuth character, Darby, played by Emma Corrin, invited to a tech retreat from this, world famous tech billionaire, tech activist, played by Clive Owen. And Darby, there's a death at this retreat, which is in a secluded resort in Iceland. Really cool setting. And Darby is trying to uncover the identity of the murderer and figure out what's going on. That's a really good hook. And I think if there's one thing to criticize about Murder at the End of the World, and it's something that we don't really have an answer to yet, it's the fact that there's 2 different timelines, 2 different story threads with this show. The other story thread, which we get a lot of through the first 2 episodes, are flashback scenes with Emma Corrin in the past, basically how Darby became who Darby is. And, her growing up in the morgue with her coroner father, becoming interested in this thing, specifically becoming interested in unsolved murders, particularly of unsolved female murders, Jane Doe's. And that past timeline, she's spending a lot of time with someone she meets of similar interests online, Bill, played by Harris Dickinson. And you have that timeline, as well as the, I think, more conventional, more familiar, murder at the end of the world, murder in the Iceland retreat, surrounding all the tech people, that story. And whereas the past story is more about Bill and Darby kind of chasing down, trying to follow the trail of a serial killer who's leaving behind Jane Doe's. We just don't know how effectively those 2 plots are going to converge with the series, and we don't know if they'll both hold equal attention. So far, I think the performances are really great. Emma Corrin is a really compelling actress. I have not really seen much of her to this point, of course, getting a lot of acclaim for the role she did in The Crown. They did in The Crown. We know Emma will be in Deadpool 3 next year. Pretty acclaimed performer at this point. I think Corrin is really compelling as Darby and definitely strong enough to hold the lead. And, I like Harris Dickinson as well. He's really rising quickly as well, following Triangle of Sadness last year, The Iron Claw later this year. Definitely a rising talent, no doubt. And then, you have really capable, steady people also in the show, like, of course, Clive Owen. So I'm pretty hooked on the show. I'm curious if Britt Marling and Zal Bajmanjli, I'm curious if they will, truly play this as, a kind of straightforward thing following the OA. Because they're the kind of people that probably have the carte blanche following the success of the OA to continue to do weird stuff if they so chose. But it doesn't sound like they've done that with this. So I'm pretty hooked on the mystery, and I definitely want to see it through to the conclusion, because obviously there's more than meets the eye with what we know so far. And I think just the tech billionaire stuff, the representation of the tech in the series, with this AI assistant that you can augment reality, visualize in the world, and just the setting of a retreat in remote, snowy Iceland. A lot of things to like. So I'm in. The show, it will be ending right before the holidays next month. So let me know, how are you feeling about Murder at the End of the World? Are you hooked? Are you interested in seeing through to its conclusion? Let me know. And for more TV reviews, more movie reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Monarch, Legacy of Monsters, the new kaiju sci-fi series in Legendary's Monsterverse, our first entry in the Monsterverse on TV, and of course, first entry in the Monsterverse at all since 2021's Godzilla vs. Kong, one of the big hits of the pandemic box office. We know that the Monsterverse will be continuing after the show next year with Godzilla x Kong, The New Empire in April 2024. And then independent of the Monsterverse, Godzilla Plus One, a new Godzilla live-action film from Japan, will also be releasing in just a few weeks. So a lot of Godzilla stuff to enjoy right about now. And I have to say, Monarch Legacy of Monsters really exceeded my expectations. This very much feels right at home in that MonsterVerse world that we've experienced over the course of 3 films to this point. And I think the way the series is weaving itself into the existing continuity we know from the past MonsterVerse films. Sorry, there are 4 of those. Of course, Godzilla 2013, Kong Skull Island in 2017, Godzilla King of Monsters 2019, and of course Godzilla vs. Kong. Those past 4 movies. The show is weaving in to what we know about those stories, I think pretty well, pretty compellingly, giving with new characters and returning characters from the movies as well. And also, thankfully, due to Apple's involvement, this show has a big budget. The CG looks great, and Monarch Legacy of Monsters is giving us kaiju, it's giving us mutos, it's giving us these monsters. We haven't seen Godzilla yet, apart from some pretty compelling flashbacks to the San Francisco Golden Gate attack from Godzilla 2014. We haven't seen any new Godzilla footage yet, though. But the CGI we have seen, I think it looks strong. These budgets look good, these locations look good, and I'm certainly in, I'm certainly down. I'm a fan of these movies in general, but I think this show will very much feel additive and not so much just kind of extraneous, in terms of like franchise bulking up and beefing out. Of course, prequels and TV shows are all the rage, but this will actually feel like, I think, a pretty fun entry. I'm definitely in. And the way it's structured, I think, is pretty important because you have 2 timelines here. One is set not quite in the present day, but set in 2015 Japan, in Tokyo, and features new characters played by Anna Sawai, Kiersey Clemens, and Anna Sawai's character's previously unknown half-brother played by Ren Watabe. And I think that time is notable because Tokyo 2015, that's taking place in the MonsterVerse post Godzilla 2014, but before Godzilla King of Monsters, when shit hit the fan, if you remember what happened in that movie. So like the world is not completely subsumed by the existence of kaiju just yet. So I think it's an interesting place in like the story continuity to put ourselves. And the other timeline is set in the past, primarily in the 50s in the Philippines, and as well as Kazakhstan, all throughout, really. We jump around in a lot of locations, a lot of time. We get a lot of those title cards, but that basically is taking us through the founding, the creation of the Monarch organization, which was about the study and identification of these unidentified monsters, unidentified creatures. Monarch takes on a bigger and bigger role and eventually becomes a lot more public facing as these movies in the MonsterVerse progress. But because we're not super far advanced in terms of the timeline, we're before the most recent movies, it makes sense to have more of an origin-y type vibe. So I'm super down with how they're setting up the continuity. And, I think the flashback stuff is pretty cool. And in general, these 2 timelines actually feel in direct service to each other because you have this new character, this army figure and founding Monarch member, Shaw, played in a dual role by both Kurt and Wyatt Russell. Having father and son play the same character it's awesome. They have a very striking visual resemblance, of course, and it's excuse to have 2 great actors. Like I think it's pretty cool. So having our new present day cast, Sawai, Clemens, and Watabe, having them interact with Kurt Russell, and meanwhile we spend time with Wyatt Russell and learn about Shaw's past exploits decades in the past. It's pretty fun, So I'm certainly intrigued, and I think we've gotten enough monster juice so far. Primarily at the end of the episodes, there's a pretty shocking death involving some monsters at the end of the first episode, and I think a really cool kind of dragon reveal at the end of the second one. We know Godzilla's coming. I'm sure we'll encounter some other more famous monsters as well in the lead up, so we'll see. But one of the other characters that we see in the past timeline, played by Anders Holm, we actually realize is a young Bill Randa. And Randa, who is, I didn't really remember this, but Bill Randa is, of course, John Goodman's character in Kong Skull Island. So kind of fun way to retcon stuff and fill in the story. And across the timelines, like there's this like mysterious, like there's bits of evidence and Monarch, this like Monarch bag that's come from Skull Island from Randa. It's now back in the present day. The plot, like core details, I'm not super concerned about, but like I just feel pretty compelled by like the structure of it, and it feels like it's really well fleshed out as a series and as a franchise entry into a franchise that had previously been movies only, you know. And in hindsight, we know how poorly things can go when you expand the TV. Look no farther than, of course, the MCU on Disney Plus, as I think a lot of people know by now. But yeah, I'm feeling pretty good about this. I think the CG has looked really strong, and I'm just kind of down. You know, I like Anna Sawai. I think she's very quickly become a huge force in TV between Pachinko and Monarch and the forthcoming Shogun on FX. She's becoming quite the presence. And of course, Kiersey Clemens, I think we know. And Watabi, I was unfamiliar with, but he seems pretty cool thus far. Also, having just recently gone to Japan, it's fun to see scenes and episodes take place in Tokyo, because I just kind of recognize architecture and recognize locations now. So I personally am enjoying that. But yeah, I'm down with this. I'm pretty with it, and now I'm curious. Regardless of how Monarch goes, I'm expecting its present day timeline to not like rapidly advance multiple years in this first season, but there's a potential now for Monarch Legacy of Monsters. Would it get a season 2? That season 2 could take place years in the future, post this new Godzilla Kong New Empire movie we get in 2024. So if they want, they can kind of push forward several years in the future and keep some of these characters around if they want. And we'll see. I'm curious if it gets that far. Obviously, it's an expensive show to make, but I'm into it. Let me know, how are you feeling about Monarch Legacy of Monsters? Are you still invested in the Monsterverse like me? Let me know. And for more Godzilla stuff, I'll be talking about Godzilla Plus One in just a few weeks when that comes out, as well as more TV reviews, movie reviews. Subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Next Goal Wins, the new sports comedy film from Taika Waititi, starring Michael Fassbender. Next Goal Wins. This is a movie we've been talking about for a long time because we thought this was coming out for years and years. A movie filmed before the pandemic, did some reshoots to replace Armie Hammer after the fact. And yeah, we've been waiting for this. It's not actually a comeback film for Michael Fassbender like The Killer, because Michael Fassbender did his scenes, 4 years ago. And there's a reason it took so long to finally get this released. It's because it's not any good. I don't think Next Goal Wins was really good at all. It was kind of laughably bad and really continues this downward spiral Taika Waititi is on as a creative force. Taika really rising up with movies like Hunt for the Wilder People, leading into that Thor Ragnarok breath of fresh air for the MCU that we had in 2017. And then he's just been kind of giving us diminishing returns. Jojo Rabbit, into Thor Love and Thunder. The Next Goal Wins is a total nadir. It's just, I think, uninspired and lacking a lot of like basic structure and convention. And this has kind of been Taika's MO lately, but I think he just keeps getting kind of worse and worse with what he's trying to do. In theory, the story behind Next Goal Wins, the real life story, is great material for a sports comedy film. This is about the American Samoa national soccer team, national football team that had previously been defeated 31-0 by Australia in a qualifying match and had never scored a goal in international competition. And they bring in this kind of outcast, exiled European soccer coach, Thomas Rongen, played by Fassbender, to kind of whip their program into shape. And eventually they are able to score a goal and win a game. And Fassbender is just incredibly miscast in this role. I don't think the script really does him a lot of favors. Like, he has to play this like really kind of overly mean and like cruel character who has a really effed up family life, and then he has to make this turn into being more of a rousing, like almost Ted Lasso-y inspiring coach and rally his ragtag team around him and around each other. And yeah, I think like the structure wise, like the turn that Fassbender has to do is just so like abrupt, and it just doesn't land at all. But also Fassbender really struggles with, I think, the tonal jumbled nature of Taika Waititi projects. Like, he's just not a good fit for this style of humor. And in general, I think the hit rate for that Taika humor is kind of low in this movie. I thought the montages could have been a lot of fun, and the training montages, the getting the game together and recruiting old players, like all these classic things that we like in movies, and that's why we keep seeing them in movies, because we like how they function. None of those work. And yeah, did I chuckle at some of the jokes that did work? Yes, I did. But that's kind of all I can really appreciate about the movie. You have Elizabeth Moss and Will Arnett, who was the Hammer replacement. You have them in kind of small administrative roles on the soccer side of things, even though Moss is actually the ex of Fassbender. Curious relationship there for sure. The most potential with the movie would have been Fassbender's, Rangan's relationship with Jaya, who is a transgender character on the Samoan team, which they call the Fa'afine people, or type of people in American Samoa. Just, the trans community is more accepted and welcome in Samoan culture, and Rangan is like incredibly mean and dead naming to Jaya, and somehow they actually become incredibly close like 10 minutes later in the movie, and they have this kind of professional relationship of respect and appreciation for one another. Like, it's just not handled very well at all. And yeah, like I just think Taika doesn't have the juice right now. Like, he was recently saying that if Thor 5 did happen, it would not involve him. Yeah, no shit, it wouldn't involve you. Like I just don't know like how anyone can trust his like ear for quality in his eye right now, because this is just a complete mess, and it comes across over two other messes. Like, yeah, we don't have any Hitler humor this time around like we got in Jojo Rabbit. I guess that's a small victory, but like, yeah, just not really a fan of the tonal jumbledness, Fassbender's miscast, the structure of the plot feels really out of sync. Did not really enjoy it at all. There's a few chuckles. That's about it. But let me know, were you anticipating Next Goal wins? Because I was at one point in time, and I was certainly let down. Were you let down too? Let me know. And for more movie reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Rustin, the new historical biopic film from George C. Wolfe, starring Coleman Domingo, about Bayard Rustin, one of the leading but perhaps under-remarked upon historical figures regarding the civil rights movement in the United States in the 50s and 60s. And yeah, this is a film that has got a lot of buzz coming into it regarding Coleman Domingo's central performance as Rustin. And that is by far the highlight of the movie. That is the reason you should want to watch this movie, because there's a lot of other things about it that don't really rise above the standard by the numbers historical biopic fare. So overall, I would recommend it for Domingo's performance, as well as just an insight into a historical figure that people certainly do not know about, to the way, of course, they know about someone like Martin Luther King Jr., obviously. So I'm happy that it's there to shed a light on someone who deserves more attention than they've previously got. But overall, I think the movie is pretty staid, pretty basic overall. And Domingo's performance, it would have been awesome if it was just in a better movie, to be honest. There's been some Oscars attention regarding his performance. I'm curious if the rest of the movie, and it's just kind of plainness, will kind of hold Domingo back from getting nominated for Best Actor in the end. We'll see. Time will tell about that. But yeah, I mean, I think part of the reason Rustin doesn't really rise above a compelling central performance is that it's directed by George C. Wolfe. George C. Wolfe has directed for Netflix before, look no further than Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, and George C. Wolfe has a theater background, and his movies largely are uninspired visually. They just are kind of flat and static, and that comes across once again with Rustin, unfortunately. He just doesn't really add a whole lot to movies as a director. He's great with talent. Look at the Domingo performance. Look at Viola Davis and Chadwick Boseman in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. He's good with talent, but ultimately his movies feel kind of stuck in the mud at times. And I think also the script of Rustin, a lot of expository dialogue, a lot of kind of basic presentations of things. You know, Rustin, a gay man who faced a lot of prejudice from within the civil rights movement due to his who he was and who he had been affiliated with as a previous communist. And like he had a lot of opposition to people that ostensibly were on his side and fighting for the same goals as him. I think that was interesting, but the script is presented, I think, a pretty basic way, to be honest. Also, I was kind of taken aback that, Bayard Rustin, who gets all this credit for being an incredible organizer and really helping push the March on Washington into existence, the actual March on Washington and the I Have a Dream speech from Dr. King, all of that's kind of yada yada, kind of rushed through to the finish line, almost montagey at times. You would think that, this Domingo performance as Rustin, really good at espousing the ideals of this man who was so selfless and dedicated in his pursuit of civil rights and achieving equality for his people, having experienced tons of prejudice in his life, of course. You would think that the movie would at least let you sit there and take in some of the triumph that was that moment, that day, and that speech. And the movie doesn't really focus on that. It's kind of an odd choice, and I don't know. I just think there was a better movie in this. This movie was produced by Higher Ground, the Obama's production company, and overall they have a pretty solid track record with stuff, primarily on the documentary front. But I don't know, this felt just a little lacking to me. Overall, I enjoyed it because I didn't know too much about Rustin the man overall. So in a sense, it's good that the movie is out there to tell people more about him. I know there's a documentary from 20 years ago about him as well. He, of course, was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom posthumously. Going to get Jeffrey Wright as an antagonist figure in the civil rights movement. He played Representative Adam Powell. And you also have Chris Rock as Roy Wilkins, the head of the NAACP. And then as a more ally of Rustin, you have Glenn Turman, who was also in Ma Rainey's. And I think Wright and Turman, always good. I'm really looking forward to seeing Jeffrey Wright in Cord Jefferson's American Fiction later this year. A lot of awards buzz for him as well. Something tells me that Domingo and Wright are probably competing for the same Best Actor nomination. Unfortunately, it's probably how it's going to shake out. But Chris Rock, not the best piece of casting. We've seen him do series before, recently in Fargo season 4. I'm just not the biggest fan of him in serious roles because I think he's just kind of one note. He can plausibly do it, but he doesn't have enough range. And to me, that was kind of a uninspired piece of casting, to be honest, as one of the antagonist figures. You have Amal Amin as MLK, ultimately a small role. I would have liked to see more of the relationship between MLK and Rustin portrayed, but yeah, I think ultimately it's not that far off from Naiad on Netflix earlier this year, another ostensible awards vehicle. That one, of course, starring Annette Bening and also with Jodie Foster. Another movie that is pretty down the middle and straightforward and broadly effective at its basic goals, but really kind of uninspired filmmaking. And we'll see if the Oscars, throw noms towards Bening and Domingo. We'll see. Because ultimately, these are not the moves with all the juice for Netflix. I think, obviously, Bradley Cooper's Maestro, which is coming out soon. That's going to lead the way, I think, in that regard. But let me know, how'd you feel about Rustin? Were you happy with how it turned out, or were you a bit let down by some of the faults outside of the central performance like I was? Let me know. And for more movie reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Dream Scenario, the new absurdist black comedy film from A24 starring Nicolas Cage. This film directed by Christopher Borgli. Not something I had much anticipation for coming into the year, but honestly one of the best absurdist comedies I've seen in quite a long time, and really continues the strong return to form we've gotten from Nicolas Cage over the past few years, between Pig and The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, and now Dream Scenario. Late period Nicolas Cage has really, I think, come on and become a great actor. He's always been a great actor, but really become a great presence in movies once again, and becoming a kind of a smart piece of casting when you have the role for him. And in the case of Dream Scenario, it just has a dynamite premise. Cage plays Paul Matthews, a tenured professor at a college who begins appearing in people's dreams. And the number of people's dreams he appears in begins to like exponentially rise. And there's no explanation or reason why he's appearing in their dreams, but he just starts appearing in all kinds of people's dreams, really just kind of doing nothing, usually just kind of on the side, watching, walking by, doing something innocuous, kind of uninvolved. And we see a lot of those dreams presented. There are a lot of like, fun sequences of watching something absurd or something random, and you just see Cage walk by or be on the side, and there's a lot of funny humor with that. And Paul Matthews, he begins to kind of relish in the fame and starts wondering if he can perhaps leverage it into benefiting his life, pursuing a book deal, things of that nature. But his wife, played by Julianne Nicholson, well, we're skeptical of how this could affect their family. They have 2 daughters. And things begin to turn in the movie as the dreams that people begin to have, they stop featuring Paul in innocuous roles and start featuring Paul in a more menacing light, sometimes committing grievous acts of violence of all shades. And Paul begins to become outcast by society due to the way he makes people feel, even though all of this is just things that are occurring in people's dreams and not anything Paul has actually done in reality. And that premise, I think, is just really compelling. You have this great extended scene where Paul goes to this kind of digital agency called Thoughts ? Who want to kind of leverage his fame and have him endorsing Sprite, ideally in people's dreams, things like that. Really good performance from the assistant at Thoughts, played by Dylan Galula, is Molly. And Molly is having these kind of really lucid sexual dreams featuring Paul. And there's, I think, a really funny sequence between them in the movie. And, I just think overall this premise, the sincerity, but also incredulity that Cage is able to play into the Matthews role, really great. Like, I think all that's really fun, and the humor begins to subside, and you start to be a bit more concerned as things become more concerning for Paul in life. I think that's where the movie might potentially stumble for some people, where it kind of becomes like a parable or a stand-in for cancel culture and just the way people can exist in society. And Paul, adamant that he has not done anything wrong, but yet he is being criticized and punished for it in one way or another, with people not wanting to be around him and telling him to stay away and things like that. And I just don't know if there's enough like comment to it, even if it's a fun approximation of such. I actually would have liked to see more of what happens at the very end of the film, where we see a cameo from Nicholas Braun as this like tech CEO, and he has all these influencers played by various people, including Amber Midthunder, Noah Centineo, Josh Richards, and they're these new dream influencers, this new technology where people can wear these kind of like Oura Ring, like wristbands basically, and kind of lucidly control their dreams in exchange for having ads basically placed in their dreams. That's a really interesting premise, and a really, like, to me, that's kind of more in sync with thematically where the movie was going earlier on, where people's relationship with society and with each other, and how that's, informed by commercial forces. That's pretty interesting. I would like more time with that. I think the very ending scene is pretty nice between Paul and Julianne Nicholson's character. Funny call back to the very beginning. But yeah, I think ultimately it's a movie that probably starts stronger than it ends, but still okay, because I think it was a dynamite presence. It's executed on really well in the beginning, and the Cage performance is like just really dependable. So I was really pleasantly entertained, and Cage continues to really kind of run it up lately in terms of taking really choice roles and doing a lot. This is a very different performance from Pig, but both of those performances are great. So shout out Cage, really making it all the way back, I think. And A24, once again, just another awesome notch in the belt for them with Dream Scenario. But let me know, how did you feel about Dream Scenario? How did you feel about the ending? Did you feel it ended as strongly as it began? And for more movie reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, the Hunger Games prequel film based off the Hunger Games prequel book that came out in 2020. Of course, this is the first Hunger Games film in 8 years. It's been 8 years since the series of 4 films starring Jennifer Lawrence concluded. And I don't know if I was necessarily looking forward to more Hunger Games franchise film adaptations, but I actually thought Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, pretty good, better than I expected. Made some interesting choices that kind of differentiate it from the previous Hunger Games films, and I thought it was done pretty well. And man, it's coming at an interesting time because the Hunger Games feels like such a product of the past with Hollywood. Of course, young adult novel adaptations are really a thing of the past. We just haven't really gotten them in a while. And you know, who knows? Maybe that'll change. We know there's a Percy Jackson series debuting on Disney Plus next month. That was pretty hyped up. A lot of fans for that. I don't know if Hunger Games fans were necessarily clamoring for the prequel book to be adapted. Notably, it's the only prequel book. But nonetheless, Lionsgate's back at it again. Francis Lord's back in the director chair. And this is a prequel in every sense. It's set in the far past of the Hunger Games at the time of the 10th games. And our lead protagonist is none other than Coriolanus Snow, played by Tom Blyth. You might remember Coriolanus Snow as the chief antagonist of the Hunger Games films, played, of course, by Donald Sutherland. So now we are learning about basically the origin of the chief villain of the Hunger Games, and his come up as someone who came from a well-known family but didn't have a lot of money, and his ambition and his drive, and ultimately what changed him and caused him to become a really bad guy by the time we encountered him in Donald Sutherland's version of him. And alongside him, of course, we have Rachel Zegler back in another franchise movie playing Lucy Gray Baird, the tribute selected from District 12. Of course, District 12, Katniss Everdeen, Jennifer Lawrence's district in the future. And also in the film, we have Jason Schwartzman as the kind of media presenter character for the television adaptations of the Hunger Games, similar to the Stanley Tucci character you get in the other movies. You have Viola Davis really enjoying herself as the head of the Pan Am War Department and also the game maker for the Hunger Games. She seems to be really enjoying herself. And Peter Dinklage as the dean of Tom Blyth's Coriolanus' academy school. You have Hunter Schafer as Tigress, young Tigress, Snow's sister, who we would see as an adult in the other films. And yeah, it's a good cast. And I think what's interesting about how the way the Hunger Games prequel here is structured is that the Hunger Games have concluded by Act 2 in this movie. There's significantly more movie to come following the games being over. And that's just an interesting choice to me. You know, I think because these are the early games, and these are time when the games were like lower rated, and they, Viola Davis and Dinklage and them, they decide to up the stakes by having these academy students be selected as mentors for the various tributes. And that's how Snow and Lucy come into contact with each other as they're paired up. And the games, it's a much more like traditional like arena. It's not as opulent and, amusement parky, Jurassic Park at like the way the Hunger Games were in the other movies, where it was really high tech and advanced and developed. So that simple nature, I think, is a cool switch up, although visually it's not quite as interesting. There's certainly some contrived sequences that result in Lucy surviving and being the winner of the games. But ultimately, the games themselves, while I think they're ultimately compelling, it's kind of a foregone conclusion that Snow and Lucy are going to survive and make it through. And what's to come is actually a bit more interesting, because we see Snow's kind of naked ambition and desire to protect himself, ultimately resulting in him betraying one of his close friends, sentencing him to death in order to save his own neck. And Lucy, despite feeling some kind of attachment, kindred spirit with Snow, following his efforts to get her through the games, even if it was an act of self-interest, her suspicions and doubts about Snow begin to increase. And it's a pretty compelling ending as a result. So, yeah, like, I think in terms of like a return to the Hunger Games world, I think like thematically it's actually pretty interesting because it kind of centers your bad guy and doesn't really pull any punches with his turn and his, I think, kind of the ugliness of his character in the end, even though he's initially presented as someone much more likable and kind and trying to do things for his family and that, and watching how that turn goes and seeing Lucy kind of expose him to himself in that regard. I think it's done pretty well. I think Tom Blyth, who I had not really seen in all too much, does a really good job as Coriolanus, and I thought he had really good presence, also great chemistry with Ziegler. Going in, you might think that Ziegler is more the lead character than she actually is, but very much that is not the case. Snow is the lead. And Ziegler, I think she's a great choice for this because the character of Lucy is a singer. And of course, Rachel Ziegler, the theater kid that she is, has an amazing voice, as we knew from West Side Story. And she's, I think, really captivating. She has like legitimate star power. She is a really good performer and a great choice, I think, for this role. And I think she makes a huge impression in the movie, and they have really good chemistry, and they have some really strong scenes towards the second half of the film. And I really like that. Ziegler will next be seeing her in the Disney live action Snow White in a few years from now. But, I thought she was the best part of Shazam 2 earlier this year. Of course, she's great in West Side Story. I think she's a really good actress. She's going to be around a long time. And Tom Blyth, I think, definitely opened a lot of eyes with this performance as well. So, yeah, for someone who was not like a hardcore Hunger Games fans at all, I had not read the prequel book. I thought some of the structural choices, the just core lead performances you get from Ziegler and Blyth, I think Viola Davis really showing out, enjoying herself. This franchise has done that before with people like, Philip Seymour Hoffman and Woody Harrelson. They've gotten great actors to kind of let it all out in like smaller parts in this franchise before. But Viola Davis, I think, is really enjoying herself as this kind of demented, almost like Dr. Frankenstein type character. So between all that, I think Schwartzman honestly has some of the best humor and levity in the movie in his kind of small role. Yeah, I think, if anything, I think the PG-13 nature of the movie kind of sanitizes down the battle royale nature of it all, and all the deaths in the games are a lot more simple and straightforward than they end up being in the Jennifer Lawrence films, where the Hunger Games themselves are a much bigger spectacle. But again, that's to be expected. And because this movie is not actually super interested in the games themselves, I think it's okay. So yeah, I thought it was a pretty solid entry. Notably, the box office has been on the softer side of things. I'm curious to see how the movie legs, because this is a film that was produced on a modest budget. I think this is a really smart decision by Lionsgate and all the financing, because it's only a $100 million budget. That's a pretty modest sum for a big blockbuster. And even if this is not going to be a gigantic hit, I'd be curious if the movie is successful enough to justify another entry. Of course, there's no book to adapt. We'll see. But even if it's not, I thought it was still pretty worthy attempt because of the switch ups they made. So let me know, how'd you feel about the Hunger Games, the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes? What did you think of it? Were you anticipating it? Unlike me, let me know. And for more movie reviews, subscribe. And I'll see you next time. All right, that's going to do it for the pod this week. Next week, not quite as big a pod, but got a few things, and I'm sure some other stuff will come up. First and foremost, Ridley Scott's Napoleon, starring Joaquin Phoenix and Vanessa Kirby. Apple's second big film of the year, following Killers of the Flower Moon. Cannot wait to get into that. Also, FX on Hulu's Fargo Season 5 from Noel Hawley. Fargo is back. Of course, we got to get into that. And Disney, back with another animation film, original animation film, Wish, the latest from Disney. We'll get into that as well. Make sure you subscribe. YouTube.com/nostalgiapod, Linktree.com/nostalgiapod. Get the pod any way you can. Just make sure you get it. Leave a review, leave a star rating, do the thing. Send me a comment, send me a tweet. Let me know how you're feeling. Of course, see the links below for the best of 2023 Spotify playlist, my favorite songs of the year, updated weekly. and for more. And yeah, I'll see you next week.